It's a beautiful sunny day here in Los Angeles, and I have the opportunity to be out here in Marina del Rey. Last week, I attended the Palisade Strong event invited by Bonnie, and the idea was just to meet some of the people in the community and get some of the human stories. News is moving so fast these days that things that are important and tragic or imperative that we know about kind of get buried. So I'm here just to continue to bring to light some of what happened during the Palisade and of course the Altadena fire. I'm more focused right now on Pacific Palisade. But at that event, I had the opportunity to meet a few people there, and I had the honor of meeting a great guy, a real brother. I felt just connected right from the beginning. So we're out here on his boat today just to share a little bit about his story of him being in the Palisade and the fire. I know he has some incredible things to share. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and this is part of our Stock Foundation Build Back Green LA initiative that we're kind of just getting underway. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our brother Rashi. So again, sorry for your loss and welcome, and we're all ears to kind of hear about your story.
Hi, how are you guys? Yeah, I'm Rashi Kaslow. I was in the Palisades Bowl mobile home park for 17 and a half years until January 7th, when I thankfully moved on to my office boat that I bought for $1 and finished the day before the fire. But yeah, I don't know. I was gonna leave the States, and my family and I decided, okay, I'll try a new life on one of the last affordable housing communities on the West Side. And it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was paradise. We loved it. All of us loved it. We had our problems with the management over the years, but yeah, it was amazing. And it was kind of crazy that it even was a thing, really, because any relic of the past like that probably gone, you know, just from gentrification. So, um, but yeah, it's hard to know exactly where to begin, but I'm a sailboat rigger, so I work down here, and I would I would go home to a wonderful place, and it was often hard to leave. But the day of the fire, I was up there, and I was making some travel plans, and I saw the planes flying overhead, and started taking some pictures, but didn't really think, that it wouldn't get taken care of. So, uh,
And Rashi, where specifically did you live in that area?
I was in Unit 27, so I was against the hillside there, very private. You'd open the door, and it was just look at this beautiful hillside. It's unbelievable, really. But yeah, my neighbor Ellie next door, she's like a mom figure, and you know, towards the end, I had been kind of renting out the house here and there at the beginning, but I had some of the best years there in the end. Myself and my girlfriend, and anyway, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to jump ahead too far.
So you're living in the Pacific Palisade, and it was the Palisade Bowl,
Palisades Bowl Mobile Home Park, yeah.
right? And can you
Owned
tell?
by, that was like Ed Biggs was the owner. He had 17 parks, and it was like his, I think, anyway, across America. And It was like his, maybe mostly on the West Coast, but it was his cherished park, and he had big plans for it to make as much money as he could. But I think those plans got thwarted in the end, and then of course he passed away and left it to his wife, and so it's kind of co-owned by two different parties, and they're kind of, I don't think they have very much clarity about what they want to do as far as the future and what it's going to cost them. It's been a bit of a problem park for them. So,
And if I'm understood right, the other night at Palisade Strong, there was dozens, if not hundreds of people that lived in this
yeah,
park, ranging from homes to trailers to, can you give us a little sense of the community?
yeah, well, they were all mostly mobile homes, a few trailers, like park models that were smaller units, but like mine was from 1958. So it was, you look at Alfred Hitchcock's first TV show, I think it was shot there. And it was one of the first mobile home parks, I think, in America. And it was definitely a piece of history. So it's a major loss, it and everything else that got consumed by the fire, east and west side. A lot of history gone. Just my place alone was full of 4 generations of family archival materials. So it's pretty devastating.
And what was amazing, just to go kind of backwards before we move forward to the day of the fire and what happened, you also kind of come from a legacy family. You were telling me a little bit about some of.
Yeah, my mom was co-founder of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and managed some really amazing people, and was a great singer in her own right. And she was an archivist, and so I had been taking care of her stuff for 16 years, or excuse me, no, since I was 16, for 29 years. And almost 30 years. And my great grandfather was an archivist and writer and journalist, and all of the family stuff that I planned on doing things with in the future. But I did manage to save. All I really took was my mother's journals. So from 66 to 95. So hopefully I'll do something with them. That's kind of the plan. Perhaps make a film about it now that they're even more important. But I didn't really think it was going to happen per se. I couldn't believe it. I was too overwhelmed with the idea. So I said, what's the most important thing? And grab that, a photograph of her, my laptop, and my titles to my, cars and whatever. Yeah.
So the day of the fire, you were photographing, you saw some of the planes.
Yeah, it started to get more and more intense. And a friend of mine, Sherry Benedon, said, take a bunch of pictures. She had been through a fire herself. And so instead of packing up my van, I just put the journals in there and, started documenting as much as I could what was going on. It was way too overwhelming. The key was to not panic. And so, but there was no for me, there was, my girlfriend took a lot of her stuff out, thankfully. And she left first with the dog and came down to the marina. But for me, I had 17 years of my life and things there, so it was too overwhelming. It was like kind of being held at gunpoint, trying not to panic. That was the key, because I knew that if I did, even for a second, I was going to lose it. So I just tried to stay calm and document things.
So at what point did you actually realize the potential of the fire reaching you? And also, we hear different things in the media. Has it been clearly identified how the fire started?
No, definitely not. There's a lot of weird theories. there was the firework theory. So, that on New Year's, there was a fire up there in that exact spot, and that the roots of the chaparral or whatever stayed burning. And so it begs the question of why then, if it's possible, like for a fire to reignite, like what, and a wind event to be taking place, like you should probably have, fire people stationed in those areas, hopefully ready to do something. There was a lot of lack of preparedness, it felt like. Then when the moment hit, I remember being told, go get the fire truck, go get, and I ran down, and one of the firemen very intensely told me, we just don't have the resources, man. And I was very confused. It was like cognitively, I couldn't make sense of that. And I think they were put in a really bad position as well. So
I know we saw a lot in the media about the lack of funding before the event, also about some of the reservoirs were dry. And you had mentioned fireworks. How previous before the fire would that have actually, that original ignition been?
well, 6, 7 days, I guess. The night of New Year's, I think.
I also saw, and again, I want to just be respectful. I also saw in the media that they said some people were seen or even arrested potentially starting fires. I don't know if you heard anything.
Um, that I don't know, but there was some weird fake fire truck maybe that was roaming around of this very strange couple who had a history of arson. I saw that story. That was, or he did, like, that was really bizarre. Yeah, I don't want to misquote that story.
Right.
But
No,
that was,
exactly. We're not claiming anything. We're kind of just generally exploring.
there were so many fires, right? That it felt there's this has to this has to be somehow coordinated. There were definitely arsonists, creating problems.
Well, they found in Northern California for some of the fires, it was actually a disgruntled professor who was caught lighting intentional fires as his methodology of protesting. Unfortunately, these are innocent people that were affected. And I also heard theories about even cinders were traveling potentially from Altadena fire, which again, we're not stating anything like this is the actual fact, but we've seen videos of the tower igniting sparks, which potentially was, at this point, I think, the source of that fire. And of course, we know, because I was involved as a journalist with the Paradise Fire, that cinders do travel and can ignite other points. So, but it still seems a little speculative of where it actually started. Is that correct to say, or?
I'm not going to say it's wrong. I don't know. I mean, I think it started in the Highlands,
Okay.
In that one location where the fireworks went off, but I don't know definitively. I left when the ashes started to come down, and I wanted to get my van out of there, and so I went to the first turnoff on PCH that I could find a spot to park, and that was like West Channel and the beach, and I was FaceTiming with my father and looking at these plumes of smoke, and thinking about my next door neighbor who wasn't wanting to leave, Ellie, who's like older person. I won't say her age, but my mom figure, she was not leaving. She said not until the flames came over the hillside.
And of course, you're sitting there, you're seeing the ash come down. You go to the Pacific Coast Highway. You're not only dealing with what's happening with my place, but now this thing of knowing one of your neighbors. And I'm sure at that point it was pretty chaotic, of people starting to pour out of the area
Yeah.
towards I guess either Coast Highway or out towards the 101.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking? You're there now, and
Well, I saw the smoke. I was just taking it all in. I was talking to my father, and of course thinking about Ellie still being there, but just like hoping, okay, this is going to get contained. And then at some point, I saw way up in the distance that the coast had lit up. That one house had started to go off on the coast. And I said, "Oh, that's this is it. It's made it to the coast. We're screwed." And so I started charging my electric skateboard. Because I was not going to bring the band back, but I wanted to go get Ellie, make sure she was okay, and I had very little charge, and I was talking to my father and realizing it was not getting any better, obviously, and he told me to get a mask, and thankfully I had a mask, and I left, finally got enough charge, and I left like 2 or 3 times trying to be prepared to go, and had just enough charge to get up there and make it all the way. It's like a couple of miles, but
on your electric skateboard.
yeah. So I make it all the way to Ellie, and I go into her place, and she's on the phone. I was like, "Ellie, we got to go. The fire's to the coast. This is it." And she said, "Like I said, I'm not leaving until the flames come over the hillside." I guess I forgot also, I took my mask off, and I said, "Oh my God, it's so smoky in here." She said, "Well, there's smoke everywhere, Rashi." So she told me later she couldn't smell very well at the time too. So it was pretty overwhelming. I go outside, I see one of my neighbors. She's in a towel coming out of the pool, and took a picture of that. It's kind of unbelievable. And there it was, like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40-foot flames coming over the hillside. I ran back into Ellie, and I said, "This is it, for real. This is, And so she came out and checked it out. And I said, "Meet me in the entrance." And I went down and went across the street to the parking lot just to witness what was going on. And I don't know, it seemed like forever, but must have been like 15 minutes past. And I said, "What the hell is Ellie doing?" I went back, and she was watering the hillside. And I said, this is crazy. And the police were going up and down the streets, and they were wondering what I was doing. They were telling people to leave, and another, 5-10 minutes go by. I don't know. She's finally ready to go, and we make it down to the entrance together, and these neighbors run down, and they say that the structures are on fire. And so, despite making all this effort just to come get Ellie and get her out of there, and get us to safety, she was like, "Oh shit, gotta help these neighbors." And it was like this kind of ethical battle in my own head, because all you want to do is leave. And
Now Ellie had a car.
Ellie's car was across the street. Yeah. So, yeah. So that was the plan, was to get there and get out. And I just, despite the battle in my head, I said, if it was me, I would want somebody to do it too, to help. So I guess we got to do this, and we certainly tried as hard as possible. And I found myself on the front of the hill, in front of the park, hanging off the side of this hill of this chain link fence, geofencing, and they lowered a hose down to me. I was trying to spray off the front of the structure, and then the hillside, and the brush, and the smoke, and the wind, and the heat. Like, one of the windows blown out, and I tried as hard as I could, and I just thought, if that one goes, this is bad. Like, I gotta get out of here. And that was a really that was a really hard moment to feel like, maybe we can do something, but at the end, I had to give up. So, um, anyway, Ellie and I uh, went down to the parking lot, stayed as long as we could, watched the whole hillside light up, and the palm trees behind us and the structures behind us were on fire. It was like, we gotta go. We can't stay any longer. And that was that. Apparently the hillside burned though, and that was about 4:30. And there was a gentleman there, Seamus Doherty's father. I worked anyway. Uh, he was there and till about 7:30, and said that all the fuel on the hillside was gone. They thought the park might be saved, and then one palm tree lit up and just torched the whole park in like 10 minutes. So, and he was very lucky to get out alive. Got like burned a little bit on his face. So if he was there any longer, like 30 seconds longer, he would have maybe perished. So, yeah.
So you were at the neighbor's place and it got to the point where you just had to go.
At this point, Ellie and I were across the street, and even, everything behind us, in front of us and behind us was lit up, and we couldn't breathe really either. It was so, it was a firestorm. I had never experienced what that was like, but it's kind of the equivalent of like a snowstorm with ashes and smoke. It's kind of unbelievable.
And of course, the Santa Ana winds, I suppose at the same time, were blowing,
Right.
They call fire cyclones. So,
Yeah, it was like a hurricane, small hurricane of fire. It was unbelievable. And I mean, I don't know what you could do, but you would think that our primary issues here are fire and crime. That should be like some of our priorities as far as like preventative, measures to keep our society healthy. This loss was unbelievable for everyone in the city.
did the neighbor make it out?
Ellie?
They had left already. You were with Ellie, but when you went to the other neighbor,
They did make it out. Yeah, I was very
Thank
concerned about them. I kept trying to get them to leave the structure, and because I knew, from there was no saving it. There was just no saving it. So, but it's nice to know we tried. I mean, I can kind of sleep at night knowing, okay, yeah, you did everything you could.
and that's what I saw in Paradise, despite the catastrophe. It was kind of a watershed moment for people helping each other, helping neighbors. And again, I find here, regardless of whatever services are offered by town or city, state, county, country, um, there's really, like you said, resources could be limited, and there's only so much they can do. And I've come to understand through doing like community resilience work. Up in Nevada County, we've had several large fires, of course, the Paradise Fire, and then an acceleration of the idea of firewise communities and fire mitigation and all these things. At some point, I'd like to share a video with you, but it's really a time where hopefully people are inspired like you were to take an active role in our communities and helping each other and starting to approach society in a more compassionate and collaborative way. And your story is incredible. It's such a testimonial. I mean, who knows what would have happened if you hadn't,
I don't know. I mean, again, I'm glad I did what I could to help Ellie and the neighbors, but I don't feel like I'm hero. I love Ellie. She's like a mom. Not going to let anything happen to her, and thank God she's okay. Of course, her car got stolen after where she went to stay. Then she let me start a little GoFundMe for her. She wouldn't take anything. She's a very tough person.
Yeah, I also talked to some of your neighbors that people were actually looted, that people were going up there and looting.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of insults, injury, looting.
and it took a while, I think, for the police and authorities to, and again, do everything they could to get a grip on controlling the flow in and out of people. And of course, then, like you said, the fire spread to the coast and to Malibu. Um, accessing the area. I mean, that's a huge disaster to manage. And of course, strange enough, I was on Santa Monica Pier the day before the fire with my daughter who lives in Ojai, and my girlfriend looking up at the Palisades and Topanga area and being like, "Oh, it's such a beautiful area." The strange thing, it was also just weeks after the Pepperdine fire happened, which
Well, also they had a lot of notice this, that was like one of the most extreme wind events of the year. So that's when you've got to really be on the ball. But I do think there was a lack of preparedness and funding and general readiness, which isn't fair to residents, taxpayers, firefighters either. So, it's hard not to point the finger at some of the politicians or some of the choices that have been made in terms of leadership.
and also I will say the incompetence of people. I live in a desert area and I'm constantly driving and seeing people just throwing a cigarette out the window, just complete lack of awareness. So, there's this whole idea of educating the public how to be more resilient, more prepared, more safe. And unfortunately, that requires some level of radical self-responsibility, which, we can only do so much. But like you said, civically speaking and the authorities, their ability to respond.
So having water would have been nice. I remember the water pressure being really mellow, and I couldn't figure that out. I was doing a little watering as well, but yeah, the fact that that reservoir was empty was pretty weird to admit, you know. Um, and then some places, if you could afford it, yeah, they were able to save certain, like Caruso's property. Thank God the lake shrine. There were some people really fighting for that stuff. So,
And I did see a little mini documentary about people who had the resources to build more fire resistant and install sprinkler systems. And
yeah, I think we had some, and I don't know that they were used. So
Wow.
that might become a thing at some point. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I had had more preparedness. I think citizens should get trained to deal with whatever happens, to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. We should all learn about what to do in the future. That would be radical.
yeah,
Had I had more training and maybe some gear, like wouldn't have been on the side of the hill, getting flames and smoke barreling at me. Of course, the fire people were there, but there were hundreds of fire people that like nothing happened. I didn't understand. I could not understand. There were literally hundreds of fire people lined up and nothing, no response. So they were in a problem too, and they were kind of stationed there on the coast. So it appeared like what, why,
right.
but they were trying to figure out. And at some point, the wind and the fire was so heavy that it's unfightable.
And also I think a part of it is how resources get deployed on different levels of communities, let's say. And I don't want to go way into that. It's a little bit of a sensitive issue, and I'm not overly implying anything, but watching how during those few days, how resources were deployed to certain neighborhoods or communities or certain communities as opposed to responding to typically more marginalized
Right.
communities.
You would think that the Palisades Bowl, Tahitian Terrace. Malibu Village was the third one. They own their land, but you would think that the affordable housing community residents would be like the number one priority, like for people to, you know, just, yeah, you would think, but because a lot of the Palisadians had resources, but it's all relative, and I don't want to also minimize anyone in this scenario. But yeah, it's a weird position to be in, especially the problem for us is we don't own the land, so it's all the more precarious. And next door, they're going to rebuild. Their owners have been communicative, and they're planning on rebuilding.
Is that Tahitian Terrace?
Tahitian Terrace, yeah, and they've cleared the land, at least the surface of the debris. But the first thing you see as you drive up the coast, look to your right after Temescal, is our just like bomb. So everything's still there, and it's like
All the debris still there.
yeah, it's horrible. It's kind of like
Ah,
I almost wish people could see, like, walk through it. It's just so it's crazy that it's still happening. I mean, they haven't cleaned up all of Malibu, so that's pretty devastating to see too. But the first thing you see is just our park. It's annihilated.
well, I'll be honest. After the fires in Paradise, even though we had to wear respirators because of the toxins, we were allowed access as press just to kind of show people what's going on, because a lot of people don't know. And again, a lot of people are busy in their own life or have their own things to contend with. But what these images are really powerful, they kind of uh, shock and inspire people like, oh, okay, that could be me. Also, after there was a horrific grass fire in Denver, you might have heard about. And in Denver, they're doing huge, massive, what I call like micro condo communities, thousands of structures, because a lot of the tech is moving there. But there was a simple grass fire, and it just went, like you said, like one of these fire cyclones or hurricanes, and it burned down thousands of houses in a matter of a day and a half because of them being put together. So a lot of my work through media and education is, fire mitigation, fire wise. How do we become more prepared, more resilient? If things happen, how do we respond to that? I was doing things in Nevada County. I'm not going to get into that or my story, but that's part of why I'm kind of here and passionate about doing this, because it is a time of like a lot of changes, whether you believe in climate change or not. We see a lot of the way society has operated that really some aspects probably need to change, because the climate's changing, the world is changing, the environment, all these things are happening. And at the same time empowering people with the knowledge of these things. So but we went there and afterwards, and we did video of what happened after the fire. And as you're saying, you can't really put it in words. And besides the material damage, there's the impact on our communities and impact on people. And the which I really appreciate about the Palisade Strong event, because I believe Steve was talking a lot about the trauma that the community's dealing with, and having an opportunity to bring people together. I think it's kind of all part of the bigger process of healing, cleanup, remediating, and then even thinking about the future, which again is kind of instilled into this whole Build Back Green concept that we're working with. So before we get closer to the ending here in a minute, so after the fire, you're here in Marina del Rey. What do you find is your biggest challenge, and what potentially, ideally, would the future look like for you or for the Palisade Bowl?
Well, I guess the bowl, I think it's going to take a long time, but yeah, it's unclear what's going to happen up there. But we all hope that we can return. We have the first right of return, I guess, is kind of our only thing we can stand on. but it's all dependent upon the owners making that decision. And yeah, we don't know. We don't know. As far as me, obviously that'll play a part. I'll have to figure out how to, perhaps there'll be some kind of lawsuit or something that will help me to rebuild. It's very expensive in the end to just put a new structure on and everything else.
So you'd
even
like
if I
to,
do have the first right,
you'd like to return.
we all want to go back.
And of course, another big issue is I know in California, because of the amount of fires and damage, and we haven't even talked to, we probably won't tell you about after the fire and then the rains, contamination of the water, the ocean, and marine life. But I think practically speaking, a lot of people aren't able to get insured anymore or have very minimal insurance. I mean, the insurance industry, they're there to, bottom line. But the idea of kind of profit over people, I think it's kind of this old paradigm. We have to, there's so much of this talk right now about, let's make America great again, and let's focus on our needs. And even though I still believe we should help others in the world, we still have so much work to do here in our own community. And I say that as a policy and a concept, not as I'm leaning towards one advocate of one specific political party, but nonetheless, a lot of people don't have insurance that had very minimal. So this even idea of building back is kind of,
I didn't have insurance.
It's out of reach in a way.
Yeah.
So
we'll cross that bridge. We still have the question of if, and we don't know how long that if will be. So just a waiting game, I guess. And I'm grateful to have my boat, to have something familiar. But there's a lot of us who are still really bouncing around and figuring it out. You met a lot of them.
Yeah. So before we conclude, is there anything else you'd like to share? And I know for me and people I work with, our thoughts and prayers are with you. I mean, we all have our own struggles, but this thing of what happened is really it's really devastating, and it's something.
Yeah, don't be deceived. I mean, it seems like it's great to be here, but that was to lose your home is unbelievable. And the second part of your question before about my future, it's hopefully somehow it's some kind of transformational blessing for me personally. That's been incredibly hard. The ripple effect of moving down to the stress of the fire, the trauma. My relationship didn't survive that, and my business. I shut my business down as a sailboat rigger because I couldn't handle it. I didn't take enough time. You don't realize that people need to be given the time and space to heal. So I've kind of had to force myself to just stop everything for whatever that cost of that is. So people forget about the ripple effect. So I think it's important to continue to keep it in everyone's consciousness so we can help the whole city and west side and Palisades Bowl, Palisadians. It's going to take a long time. So, God bless all of us.
And we are really in this together. I know this is relevant to you in this region, but we all over the world, all over the country, we're seeing things, hurricanes and tornadoes and flooding. And so, we are kind of in this together. So again, our thoughts and prayers out to you. And we do want to stay in touch, as I know some people did get the Army Corps of Engineer to do cleanup.
Yeah.
That seemed very much like begged and pleaded with, but
I think there should be something done immediately because that debris is still. I went back when I first went back. I couldn't find my boots. I went back in my sandals and my socks, and I realized, wow, I was standing in probably lithium ashes.
Well, that's another
Good
one of
stuff.
the,
Good stuff.
that's one of the bizarre things of all the EV vehicles now. And we found that in Paradise up there, they also had mining. So a lot of the mines were exposed, a lot of things like mercury. And then you have the whole list of household products, paints, chemicals, cars.
Yeah, I had a 5 kilowatt battery that was from my van power system go off in my living room, you know. It was like at least 2000 degrees, all of my stuff fused like enamel pots. And like it was so hot. Bronze nearly melted in a sense, but definitely deformed. So yeah, and all of that is still there. So I don't know that the straw barrel, you know, things are going to stop that from going into the ocean. So it seems like something has got to be done immediately,
Well,
regardless of what the owners want.
well, that's kind of why I'm glad I have a little traction with you, because we have some ideas and some people. Um, and you know, this is a huge issue. Like you said, it's not like some permaculture swales or some hay bales is going to stop it. And it's like putting a Band-Aid on cancer right now.
Yeah.
So we'll stay in touch, because I do.
Not to mention everybody's swimming's probably, you know, in some residue of that, like you know, and the beach, it's in the sand. So, you know, your dogs are playing in it.
In the marine life, I know they found some,
Yeah,
I think
all
some
of the
baby
algae,
whales and marine life that have been affected.
definitely bloomed algae that's taken out a lot of mammalian wildlife.
Maybe not the best time to eat Pacific coast fish at the sushi bar. I mean, there's a lot of ramifications to this. But anyway, I don't want to get too much down that rabbit hole, but we have some people. I would love to continue the discourse with you and Bonnie, because I did have a few meetings this week. I'm actually about to go to Build Back LA at the Arboretum, and I have some project managers and some people who have heavy equipment and construction equipment. And I know some people who do remediation, you know, biochar, mycological, you can do bamboo. I mean, there are solutions. Sometimes there's a disconnect from these solutions with people who are also working in civic service or the government. I mean, their job is not to understand all these things. They're also running a huge other entity. So part of our time here is to help build these bridges and get something done. So let's stay in touch, but we're ready to do something and move, even if it's a test pilot project. And like I said, I spoke to Bonnie. I was like, this is film worthy. Like, we really have to start. I mean, I'm here today doing a modest version, but like kind of documenting this, because it's tragic, but I think it's a human story that if it got out could create a lot of different perspective and good in the world about, you know, people hearing your story and the people that were affected. And again, not just the physical side, the human side, the emotional, and again, talking about your family's legacy of stuff. I mean, it's really beyond words. And I don't want to see any more, but I appreciate your time during your healing process, just to have this moment to chat with you and actually create a brotherhood, regardless of the future, just to have this human
Thank you so much.
connection.
Yeah. So grateful for your being here and for your help with everything. And we can't depend on everybody else to save us. So it's good to start to be creative and take some action. I think enough time has passed where it's either, you know, it's now or never. And you have the event in October, which will hopefully help, and maybe we can come up with some good ideas in the meantime for taking, you know, some activism towards accelerating this process, especially for the bowl. It's getting a little weird for us. I think a lot of other people are starting to get clarity, but we're the last remaining. You know, I think as far as America, it's one of the most important little communities there are, you know, because it represents something, you know, not some idealized past, but, you know, something beautiful that traditionally other people couldn't afford. And I don't know, it's a little microcosm of the big picture. So I was saying, you know, save the bowl, save America.
Well, it's interesting because we do see a lot of gentrification happening in communities, and a lot of people kind of getting marginalized or steamrolled in the process. So, I mean, this is obviously a real issue. You drive anywhere through LA, and the Bay Area or many parts, you see people who are in one of the wealthiest countries in the world that are really struggling just to stay above water. So again, thank you, for your time. And I'm all in. Let's see what we can do. And I know there's a delicate balance of as things legally play out and to try to coordinate with all these different elements and doing it in a
Right.
good way where it's not politicized. We're not.
Well, we want to be respectful of the owners of our place, but we also, can't just sit around while I think at some point the government should step in and start cleaning up immediately. It's regardless of what's going to happen, but
Unfortunately, we're saying that after FEMA has been greatly defunded also. So, but anyways, this is just our kind of little introduction today, and thank you for your time. And Amelia, right?
yeah, Amelia,
Amelia is blissing
she's
out
been
there.
going through her own transformation, this experience, but somehow will rise from the ashes.
Absolutely. I remain. Someone said the other day, you're so optimistic, and they actually branded me an apocalyptimist. And an apocalypse just means to reveal what's hidden. It doesn't mean the end of the world. But it was interesting because a lot is getting revealed, and through that, we remain optimistic and resilient. There are solutions ready to be deployed, but we have to roll up our sleeves and everybody do it. We can't count on someone else to fix, all the issues and problems. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you, Amelia. And we'll be in touch soon.